Welcome back, Tribe. It's your girl, Michelle Jones here with another episode of Tribe of Many Nations. I have a treat today. I've actually done research. Yes, actual bona fide? Yes, I know, it's crazy. I did research for a video. I prepared things in advance. It's crazy. So I did a thing, right? I started listening to podcasts, and I'm a huge fan of other YouTubers, like a huge fan of other YouTube creators. So most of the time I will watch YouTubers. I'll watch like different YouTube channels on the paranormal or animal rights or all these 10,000 things that interest me. But lately I've been trying to get my ass out of the house more, go exercise, go walking, go be with nature more often. Obviously it's really hard to walk and watch something at the same time. If you are like me at all, you will probably trip, fall, and bust your face. So podcasts come in handy. So I recently discovered a new podcast. They're not new, they've been around for a while, but they're new to me, called Astounding Legends, and I love them. I'm usually not a huge fan of long podcasts, like an hour or more. They do tend to have lengthy podcasts, but at the same time, it kind of helps push me to stay outdoors longer because I want to finish the podcast, and they surprisingly are able to capture and keep my attention, because my attention is a very hard thing to come by. So the simple fact that they are able to captivate me with the stories and really keep me going throughout the conversation without falling asleep or turning it off is kind of amazing, honestly. It really is. I did an episode on the Bell Witch, and I've read all sorts of different articles about the Bell Witch. I have never actually read a book on the Bell Witch, and in the Astonishing Legends episode that they did on the Bell Witch, they discussed different books about it. If you want to go check out their channel, I'm pretty sure they have a YouTube channel as well. If you want to go check them out on Spotify or whatever, they list all sorts of great book references that you can read about the Bell Witch. But we're not going to rehash the Bell Witch story. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what the Bell Witch is in case you don't know what the story is. But we're really going to dig deep as to why I think the Bell Witch was a demonic spirit. Okay, to get us started today, let's do a quick rundown of what the Bell Witch case was all about. It all starts with a dude named John Bell, who in the 1800s moved his... I actually don't know if he moved his family or if his family kind of was born after he moved. But anyway, the dude and his wife moved to a Red River area in Tennessee, and now it's called something completely different. So again, if you want to like learn where all this took place and all that stuff, definitely go check out Astonishing Legends, because they have so much information about this case. Anyway, John Bell and his wife moved to this area. I'm pretty sure the children were born after the fact, but they have 3 children. I believe 2 daughters and a son. And in 1817, specifically in 1817, randomly, after a few years, I believe, of having this property, John Bell is out in his cornfield or whatever and sees this animal that is unlike any animal, and he's pretty like certain that this animal doesn't actually exist. Some kind of freakish looking thing, right? And apparently it vanished after he took a shot at it, like literally physically vanished from sight right in front of him. And he goes on to tell his family, I believe, later on. Anyway, this event, seeing that very odd, strange animal, taking a shot at it, all of that basically sets off this ripple effect. And all of a sudden that night at the house, the family is starting to hear these random knocking sounds, beating sounds. The men are running outside trying to find who's doing this, who's out on our property right now. And there's no one to be found, right? There's no explanation for the beating noises and the rappings and the knockings, right? Then we escalate. Then things start to get really creepy and freaky and ridiculous. So it mainly centers around the children as far as this part of the story goes, where the children were experiencing having their bed covers completely ripped off of them in the night, having their pillows thrown on the ground by this unseen entity, and they also would complain of like hearing these scratching noises coming from their bedposts. So really creepy shit. As a child who grew up in a home where I was inexplicably terrified for no reason, if I had been inexplicably terrified for no reason and had all of that shit happen to me, pretty sure I'd be slightly traumatized today. Or maybe I already am. But again, we see an escalation as this small little physical anomaly of having the bed covers pulled off in the middle of the night starts turning into whisperings. There's different accounts of like what whisperings and what the voices say, but the voices themselves escalate from like hearing a few whispers here and there to hearing full-fledged conversations. There's one main entity that steps forward in this case, and it calls itself Kate. An interesting thing, which we'll touch on a minute in just a second, is the fact that there really was a Kate, whatever her last name was. I really don't remember what her last name was. There really was a person in that area that had somewhat recently died named Kate, and she had supposedly been somewhat of a witch. And so yeah, the main entity in this story called itself Kate, and the family just kind of went along with it. I don't know if they were kind of like suckered into really believing that that was the spirit of Kate. But we'll get into that more in just a second. But the fascinating thing about this case is that John Bell started to actually reach out to other people and let his friends know what was happening in the house, right? And after he told one of his best friends, the best friend came and stayed in the house and experienced it themselves. And the other people in the neighborhood, people would actually travel to come to their house to witness the phenomenon, to try to understand what was happening. They had like witch hunters show up at one point, or paranormal investigators who were trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And I don't think anybody left that situation feeling like it wasn't real. Or let me take that back. There were plenty of people that left it assuming it was a hoax of some kind, but there was no one that left that property without something odd happening to them, which is really eerie. One of the freakiest things about these stories that I read over about the voice itself was that the voice would sing hymns. The voice would recite sermons word for word of different preachers and pastors that would come to the house. And another thing is that this entity had this like random knowledge of future events, things that were going to take place. And it pretty much seemed like the entity was never wrong. Whatever Kate said tended to happen. And she always followed through on her threats. Okay, so I know that was like not detailed at all. And again, if you want like severe information, super detailed information about the Bell Witch case, I encourage you to visit the website, which I will link down below. I really encourage you to listen to the Astonishing Legends episode, which I will link down below as well. I'm pretty sure they have a YouTube channel, so I'll link that down below for y'all. But let's get into why I feel like this is a case of demonic oppression. Okay? So, first things first. And again, I know that some of you are probably watching this episode like, what the hell, Michelle? This isn't real. This is just a hoax. This is just a hoax. Blah, blah, blah. Most of the paranormal cases that I research and kind of like talk about on this channel are going to be cases that I'm assuming are real. Now, could they be hoaxes? Of course they can be hoaxes. I'm not knocking anyone who thinks that this is all bullshit and it's a hoax, okay? It's very outlandish. It's very hard to believe because it's so what, But most of the paranormal cases that I'm going to talk about on my channel, especially when it comes to demonology, I'm assuming are real, and I'm going to speak about them as if they are real. So I am not saying set in stone that they are, but like for me personally, I feel like this is a genuine case. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. So again, back to why I feel Kate was a demonic entity. First off, If we're to believe that John Bell's sighting of this crazy ass animal that's not real was the beginning of everything, it would make a lot of sense in the demonic realm. Demons can often appear psychically or whatever as creatures that do not exist, creatures that don't make sense. You'll notice in ancient artwork and different things like that demons are often depicted as animals that do not exist, or as these creatures that don't make any kind of sense. So in my mind, it does kind of make sense that a demonic entity could take that form. But it's not just that. This one entity, if it was just one, can be kind of seen as manifesting in all forms. It manifests as this weird creature that doesn't exist. It is invisible and yet is able to physically harm people and move things, and at one point even abuses Betsy, the youngest daughter, who tends to be a focal point of most of the attacks. Her and the father, John, are the focal point of most of the abusive attacks, which we'll get to that in just a second. So the fact that this entity can manifest itself, can be seen as like creatures, animals, whatever, but can also act completely invisible to the human eye as well. And another thing, this entity seems to be omniscient. I hope I'm saying that word right. This being seems to know things that other people are not capable of knowing, that a human spirit even wouldn't be capable of knowing. They can like predict future events before they happen, which I feel like a human spirit, even in spirit form, wouldn't be able to do that. And they're also like this entity also has cases of like prophesying or like making these threats, these future promises that always come true, Another thing that struck me was the escalation of the story and the activity. The moment that John sees the animal, the moment that the family starts reacting to the noises in the house, the moment the family starts to give all this attention to what is being done in the house spiritually, all of a sudden we see this escalation in power, this huge spike in power. We're going from, manifestation of some strange thing to being able to beat on the home, knocking sounds, thumping sound, whatever, to being able to physically move items like bed covers and pillows. Then all of a sudden it takes a very abusive turn at one point where there's beatings and slappings occurring to Betsy predominantly, hair pulling, things like that. And one story throughout all the many stories that go along with the Bell Witch case is a story where Kate tells the family about some kind of treasure that's buried on the property, and gives them like these specific instructions to dig a 6 by 6 by 6 hole. And so the family does that. But there's no treasure. It's like an empty promise. There's nothing there. Or to my knowledge, there was nothing there. But 6 by 6 by 6, 666, like, maybe that's just too outlandish to even be considered in this case, but that just screams demonic to me. I really would have been interested in finding out if the knocking and rapping sounds came in threes. In most of the stories I read and in the Astounding Legends podcast, they didn't really specify any stories where they counted the number of times they heard the rapping sounds, but it would have been really interesting if they had all come in threes. Another possible nod to Kate possibly being a demon is the fact that Kate was masquerading as Kate, right? So there was originally a woman named Kate who had died in the area, but as we know from previously, if you've been watching my Demonology series at all, and if you haven't, I'll link the playlist down below. Demons tend to, maybe not all the time, but can masquerade as human entities and human spirits to kind of gain access to us, gain our trust, gain our permission to be around us in a way. Like with the Annabelle case, masquerading as a human spirit. And of course it makes much more sense if you would masquerade as a human spirit of a human that actually existed, that people were well known with, like Kate. But there's also another story where at one point there were like 4 or more different voices and different personalities in the home at one time. This, I feel, is very strongly connected to the demonic because demons tend to kind of run in packs a little bit. I feel like most major exorcism cases we've ever read about or discussed have all had more than one demonic entity residing in that person, or at least residing in the home. So like there was one case where there was all these different names and different voices and stuff like that in the home, and that only lasted for a short while. That wasn't like this huge long ordeal, but Kate was obviously like the leading entity, possibly could even be classified as a devil, which if you don't know the difference between a devil and a demon, I highly encourage you to read The Demonologist, which is one of Ed and Lorraine Warren's books. But we'll get into that on another video coming up soon. But those are some of the main reasons why I feel Kate, the Bell Witch, was actually a case of demonic oppression and could have ended up in demonic possession. I feel like John was definitely the focus of the attack, but at the same time, Betsy was being very strongly attacked as well. This could possibly be because maybe those two were the most psychically weak in the home. I don't really know. Maybe they were going through the most difficult times and were easy targets. I'm not entirely sure. But, I mean, who's to know what goes on in the mind of a demon? And that was just one more reason why I was considering the demonic whenever I was listening to the podcast and really researching this case, was because like demons tend to focus their attacks on 1 or 2 people. Very rarely does a demon focus all the brunt of their attacks on like everyone in the home, especially with a large family. That's a family of 5, which in this day and age to me is considered large. I don't know. But to focus the attack on just John and just Betsy, it feels demonic in nature to me, because what that does is it causes a psychological rift between those two and the rest of the people in the home. If you're focusing your attacks on everyone equally, then everyone kind of has an understanding of what we're all going through. But if you're pinpointing 1 or 2 main victims in the home, you're separating them, you're victimizing them, and then the rest of the family is left wondering what the hell is happening, you know? But at the same time, I mean, there's some evidence that Kate wasn't necessarily a demonic entity. She had kind of a playful trickster element to her. But in my opinion, the stories I read about her being a trickster or a prankster still ended up in a very disturbing, like, dark ending to those stories. So, I mean, I don't know. There's just something about this story that screams demonic to me. So I would love to know what you guys think. What do y'all think about Kate, the Bell Witch? But other than that, guys, if y'all have any questions for me, if you have any suggestions or recommendations for video content or paranormal cases that you would like my opinion on, please comment down below. If you enjoyed today's video, let your girl know by smashing the like button down below. And if you haven't subscribed already, what are you doing? Hit the subscribe button and the bell thing. I don't know why the bell thing is important, but bell thing, Bell Witch. Interesting. Anyway, before I get too creeped out sitting over here on a rainy day, let me let you guys go. I hope y'all are having a great day, a great week, a great month, and a great year. And yeah, peace.